Okay, we'll get started. Welcome, everyone. It's good to see everyone came to hear about technology and mental health. We're going to just start with with a few short introductions, just so you know the perspective of each person on the panel. My name is Esther Howard, and my background is actually in oncology research and population health. And now I'm completely dedicated to research in mental health to find what works and what doesn't work in different populations of people around the world. And Nir?
Hi, my name is Nir Yanovsky-Dagan. I'm 44. I live in Jerusalem. I work for the Israel National Digital Agency. I'm responsible for innovation, data, and AI. And I, 10 years ago, arrived to the Ministry of Health. I was the digital leader of the Ministry of Health. And afterwards, I led a program called Digital Health as a Growth Engine. So this is where I started moving around mental health, digital mental health as well. And I'm also responsible for the Information and Knowledge Center of the INDA.
Hi, everyone. My name is Izhar Laufer, and I'm the Director of Innovation at Leumit Health Services. I came from a technological background. I was a CTO of Leumit for about 10 years and in charge of the digital services, the data channels, and such. So it's going to be interesting.
Thank you. Hey, I'm Adi Zaif. I'm a clinical psychologist, a trauma expert, and entrepreneur. I'm also the founder of The Rising Circle. It's a nonprofit that is AI supported, creating clinical trauma-based programs. In the past year, we've been working with reservist families, doing a community program involving technology, and I'm very excited to be here.
Hi everyone, good afternoon. My name is Eyal Gura. I'm a tech entrepreneur and a venture investor for the last 24 years. I've built 6 companies and invested in over 35 companies. Most recently in the digital health space. So we were one of the first companies 13 years ago to integrate health IT and AI solutions in large scales. And most recently in the mental health space, I got involved in a project that I co-founded called Healing October 7 when the war started, which is a group therapy that includes MDMA. So we will hear more about it later.
Great. So technology is the focus of today, but really the focus is technology as a tool to help us solve the mental health crisis and trauma in the world. Technology has given us the unprecedented ability to scale mental health support globally. Ironically, technology has also caused a lot of new problems, and we're using technology to solve those same problems, thinking about social media, the way that we're bombarded with bad news. And it's not necessarily more bad news in the world, it's just we're getting it all inundated. Sometimes there's more bad news in the world too. There are a lot of heated opinions when it comes to technology, and especially in mental health. Because my background is in healthcare, I see the difference between general healthcare and technology and mental health and technology, and I think it becomes a lot more fragmented and controversial when we're talking about mental health. So with those heated opinions, it makes us need to stop and pause and align with each other so that we can move forward, because technology is moving so fast right now. We can either sit back and let it go and destroy us, or we can align and figure out how to move forward together. But we can't ignore the issues and the risks and the problems that it does bring. And at the same time, we can look at where the opportunities lie. So today's conversation is going to examine the friction and explore what responsible acceleration can look like if we work together. And we're going to do this a little bit unstructured because it's good to have a little bit of friction and discussion and disagreement. That's a healthy thing so that we can all move forward together. If we have time, we'll take some questions from the audience, but this will mostly be a dialogue from the four experts here. So the first thing that we're going to start with is to talk about barriers and adoption. And the first question is, what are the main barriers and challenges to adopting new technologies in trauma healing? And so maybe we'll start with you, Adi. Yeah. Sure. And then we'll move over to Izhar and Eyal, and then the government can step in at the end.
We have so many barriers.
Yeah, you have like 5 hours? No, I'm kidding. Yeah, I think, I've been here for the past 2 days, and I've heard a lot of, about the mathematical gap that we have between clinicians and people who needs help. And I think we all agreed here that we can't hire through this problem. We have to build together through this problem. And in my perspective, there are two main things that I will mention. Of course, there are more, but in terms of the administrative burden on clinicians, I think technology serves as more of a burden right now and not an integrated in through the system for clinicians. And instead of digitizing paper, I think we can use AI to actually, at the top of the funnel, screen better to the massive amount of people that needs help. And also give insights to clinicians that can support and magnify their treatment. A second thing I want to say that I think serves as a barrier here is the hierarchy of suffering. So we have a lot of people in Israel that are suffering, and they think they're not worthy of clinical care because they're not suffering enough or they're not presenting clinical symptoms enough. I see it when we work with reservist wives. They're saying, why would I get the treatment? My friend, her husband was killed in the war, and if something more severe happened, I'm not worthy of care. But they actually are. So the non-clinical population is the majority of people. And if we're not going to reach them, there's going to be a situation where people are under stress, exhibiting symptoms that are not clinical, but not getting the care they need, which kind of infuel the intergenerational trauma that we are very familiar with from the Holocaust. And I think technology can be a very low barrier here and kind of support this, whether it's like a psychoeducational self-help intervention that can actually reach those population and the silent suffering population that can help if we use technology right. I hope it wasn't too long.
I would like to deal with the perspective of a health organization. Since October 7th, we saw tens of solutions. I believe something about 50 or 60 solutions. And many of them are pretty unique and intelligent, but in the end of the day, there are too many silos. It's like a micro solution or mini solutions. As a health organization, we cannot integrate to 12 tools per year, okay? It's hard to say, but normal health organization can integrate to 1 or 2 tools per year per sector, okay? So what I really want to see is some kind of consolidation so we can integrate to one tool and get basically a set of tools. Okay, not one tool, something that help us to communicate with the patient, something that help us do this kind of techniques and the other for another technique. I don't have to do separate integrations and agreements, and everything has its own UI and UX, and we expect the physician to know them all, or the patient knows them all. It's too much. It's overwhelming. The second thing that I would like to address is that most of the solutions we saw are additive to today's treatment. Okay, they are not standing by their own. They're not really replacing a treatment. So it does help, but it's not fully moving us forward. So it is helping, but we have a lack here in a solution that actually can totally replace a regular treatment or diagnostic.
So I'll try to touch base on a few different angles. So there is the cultural angle. Mental health is still something that is culturally hard to deal with in Israel and in our macho society. There is even a debate nowadays how the prime minister would like to title what happened in October 7 or not. It's a dilemma. Like we need to wait for someone to title it for us. So there is the cultural thing, and in addition to that, there is the amount. So imagine if someone will come to the CTOs of the HMOs in Israel and tell them there are now 500,000 more people with diabetes, or 500,000 more people suddenly with cardiac events this year. As a nation and as HMOs, it's something that wasn't dealt with before, a sudden rise in amount of a specific thing to cure. So this is like on the cultural and amount side. On the entrepreneurial side and on the venture side, there are a few layers to discuss that can be considered as barriers. So there is the data issues. So when we started 13 years ago to produce algorithms to diagnose medical imaging scans, the state of Israel already had 20 years of digital data. So it took us 2 years to anonymize it and take it out to an environment where we can research it, and there is a lot of dealing with the HMOs and a lot of challenges on those sides. But still, there were 20 years of structured data. So this is why Israel leaped forward in those spaces. In mental health, it's still in its infancy. Not all places have the data, and not in all places it's structured. And there is also the layer of venture creation and entrepreneurship. So if an entrepreneurs come to their investors and tell them, I got diagnosed with, let's say, breast cancer, and I recovered, and now I built a new tool to deal with breast cancer and to better escort the process for other ladies. She might get the funding. If an entrepreneur come to their investors and tell them, I'm in deep depression and I need your money to build something for depressed people, there is still this cultural thing. So also on the funding side, there are issues, and also investors always like to see other cases of success. Not all investors really want to take risk and invest in new bold things. They usually take comps and other examples of other things that work. This is why in Israel it's easier for investors to invest in cyber. And 13 years ago, it was very hard for them to find examples of good digital health companies. And same thing now with mental health. It seems like an acute thing to deal with, but investors always like to see how their money will create returns to their investors. And currently in mental health, we don't have enough of those examples. So all of those are compounded to many barriers.
The money is always a barrier, and it comes from every angle. All right, government.
So from my own perspective, I moved to work for the government 10 years ago, and it's quite frustrating in the sense that when I was in the private sector, I felt like I'm in a car with a lot of drivers and everyone is pushing the gas and there is one that is pushing the brake. And in the public sector, it's the opposite. Many times you feel that there are 10 different officers in different offices that have only a brake button, and you're the only one that's trying to push the gas. So we have tons of barriers, but we have one above them all that is also an opportunity. Most of the barriers you already mentioned. There is a data barrier. The data is scattered. It's very hard to collect it. It's very hard to fuse it. There is a lot of issue with privacy on mental health. It's considered even more private than the regular health data. There are issues with information security and cybersecurity. There are inter-organizational issues. There are ego issues. But all these issues tend to disappear when there is a real crisis. For example, at the beginning of COVID-19, boom, all these barriers disappeared. And I think that if people will understand that mental health is the new COVID, that this is the new epidemic, that this is something that is both urgent and acute, then these barriers will be withdrawn and we will be able to progress as we did in other issues.
Before you give away your mic, just a follow-up question to that, because last night you and I had a conversation about population health data. So sort of shifting from the barriers into the opportunities, from your perspective, are you seeing that we have enough population health data to be able to justify that gas pedal being able to move things forward?
So first of all, I think that the point that Eyal mentioned is not a cultural point, it's a value point. Okay, when people are saying, I'm a victim of a massacre, and the government says, no, there was no massacre. So this is a very bad beginning point for recovery. This is a bad beginning point for healing. Okay, the government is part of the creation of this trauma. The people that have been traumatized feel that they were abandoned by the government. So we need to be humiliated. We need to arrive to them with humility and say, we let you down. Now give us the opportunity to help you recover. And I think that this is a point of values and not a point of culture. Afterwards, we have tons of health data that examines in the Information and Knowledge Center how deep is the effect of October 7th on the entire population, on the public mental health of Israelis. Some of this data is taken from cellular diagnostics, and some of it is taken from questionnaires. And even if we follow the how many hours people sleep, how much physical activity they do, we see that there are physical elements of the trauma still in millions of Israelis. So the data is already there. It is a matter of priorities. It is a matter of management. And if the country will understand how deep is the crisis and how big is the opportunity for recovery, then it will be much easier to implement AI and technology.
I want, if I may, to object to the issue about the data in Israel regarding mental health. The reform in mental health was in 2015, July 2015. So I believe we have pretty much data already in the HMOs and the Kupot. I invite everyone to contact us if he needs this data. It's accessible for research. It's not how it was 10 years ago. So I believe we have this platform. Okay, we can do a work on this data, and it's totally accessible.
Why don't you go ahead and keep the mic then and help us shift into the next question, which we've already started. So what technologies genuinely move the field forward, and where are you still skeptical?
I started to say before that I want to see more systems that can do diagnosis or treatment by themselves. And I'm quoting from the FDA Digital Advisory Committee on last November, okay? They are saying, although the agency has authorized over 1,200 AI-enabled medical devices, none of those devices have been authorized for mental health uses. And they mean diagnostic or treatment. And this is very sad, okay? I don't know exactly what we can do on the regulation side or other sides. It's not an Israel problem, but we have to figure out how we can change it, because it really affects the ability of us to make big change in the way that we treat people. And it's connected also to the fact that most of the systems that we have around diagnostics are decision support systems, not autonomous decision-making systems. Again and again, getting back to it, the man is still in the loop. So the physician, the doctor, the psychotherapist, again, he must be in the loop. And this way, we cannot really scale as we should.
Go ahead, Adi.
So I think there's a bunch of opportunities. And like you said, there are regulation, privacy barriers. I can talk about what we did for the nonprofit, which is the top of the funnel smart triage system. That actually, it's not just like looking at the symptoms. It has the ability to look at common mental health, severe mental health, and identifying risk. And it also has the ability to identify specific community needs, which is also extremely important in order to tailor the treatment and to build specific interventions. So it's a smart system, has some AI components in it, and we worked with the reservist families, and we actually identified specific needs that they have, and also identified families that are at risk. So what I say when I talk about specific needs, I'm talking about parental needs, relationship needs that they are experiencing in their families, and it helped us build specific protocols to tailor to each family and customize the treatment. We also used, and I think that is very important, we didn't measure it only at baseline. We also continue to measure it to see if our intervention actually works. If we did like workshops or group therapy for those type of populations, we measured it every few weeks to see if specific symptoms have improved and if the needs of the community has changed. For example, the soldier is deployed in the army or coming back. The needs are different at this time. So we really stayed close to the needs and adapted protocol accordingly. And of course, everything is evidence-based. Also, the measures that we used are validated internationally. And I think this is a great opportunity to help clinicians and support clinicians and customize care in that way. Another opportunity is, I think, supporting clinicians in terms of supervision, right? There is AI that can support clinicians with, it's something that we're looking at, that can support clinician in customizing the treatment plan and in research. It exists today, and I think this will be a very good supporter for clinicians to make them better and more trained in certain protocols and in trauma-informed care.
I would like to take a step back from the current use of technology or AI in our mind. Like we envision those very sophisticated, newish things that AI geeks are developing in the garage. But technology as a whole is any type of process that can actually perform the needed result. And so in our nonprofit initiative, when we saw that the Mafat, Alona was supposed to be here in the panel, but when we saw that Mafat, the CTO of the defense arm, are doing a RFP for technology solutions to treat post-trauma, we submitted our solution, which is psychotherapy that is combined with psychedelics, just because there were peer-reviewed published articles and clinical trials that show that you can really achieve great results with those type of processes. It doesn't need to be with AI. So in those phase 3 clinical trials, it's shown that around 70% of the people no longer adhere to the CAPS test of who has PTSD, just after 15 weeks of treatments that combine psychotherapy and MDMA. So we thought, okay, this is a great technology. Now, how do we scale it? So we did a back-of-the-envelope calculation. It was very easy. And we saw that there are not enough therapists in the whole world in order to treat a nation that got into this type of trauma together. And so we built a protocol of a group therapy. Again, it's not science fiction, but we built this protocol of group therapy. We consulted with many people around the world that are doing it in groups for decades. And now this protocol got the approval of the health ministry in Israel, and we started those clinical trials. So, and Mafat got convinced that this is a healing technology, not only to deal with the symptoms of post-trauma that are immense and like lack of sleep and reduction of productivity and tons of other symptoms with actual healing. And so we still need to prove it in this clinical trial, but I'm just saying that technology doesn't need to include the AI. We had companies like Monday that volunteered to build for us the process management system. So the summoning of the 7 and 8 people to come to the group together, the performance of the group, the reports, the dashboards. But again, it's not science fiction, it's not AI, but we hope that those things will help to move this thing forward.
I don't know if I'm the only one in the room that thought about this when you were saying technology is not only AI, but I don't know if you know the reel where the kids like do really cool things and then they say technologia. It's perfect because they're commenting on the fascination of technology, and it's got nothing to do with AI or anything even electronical or like digital. It's just a gadget that has moved with technology. So you made me think of that. It's really important to remember that AI doesn't equal. It's not the only technology. We're talking about process and science and moving things forward so that we can make human lives better. Anything else to add? I would love to, before we move into AI, because we're going to, it's kind of the elephant in the room, and it's a really important topic, but any other types of examples that any of you want to share where you're seeing really good wins with using technology to move mental health forward?
Maybe I'll speak about 2 opportunities. The first one is fighting bureaucracy. Most of us, when we think about mental health digital solutions, we tend to run into the clinical outcomes because we are clinical people. And in fact, we found out that when a person needs the services of Israel's mental health system, he also gets a new job to be the clerk of the bureaucracy, because mental health is scattered between social security and HMO, and sometimes it is the municipality, sometimes it is the Ministry of Health, sometimes it is a social worker and the Ministry of Welfare. There are tons of bureaucratic procedures that can be omitted. And we use technology, not only AI, but also other types of technology, in order to build a unified case management and a unified customer journey. We try to make it more of an ask once, in the sense that the data will be transferred automatically between authorities. And I think that there is a lot of progress to be made, even if we don't touch the clinical procedure itself. And the second opportunity is to make a public health situational awareness. We now have public health data that is running in the system, and it is near real time, and it enables us to assess the mental health of the population near real time and to understand how different occasions and events affect this health. And I think that this is very important, because usually it takes us as the government a few years to understand what's working and what's not. And when we have this real-time data, we can make much wiser decisions.
Just to add on that, how simple things can be in terms of the bureaucracy. Just give an example of a portfolio company called Empathy. It's headed by my young and talented, much more talented brother, Ron. And they are dealing with a specific type of trauma, which is a loss of someone you love in a family. And they calculated that just the bureaucracy and the energy invested by the family when someone dies is accounted to several working days in the US. So now large employers and life insurance companies are actually buying this app for their insurees in order to save them the time to disconnect from all the services. And the app also includes like virtual support by nurses and other things that are helpful for the family. But just the bureaucracy part, where you disconnect from maintained services like the banks and Netflix and all those subscriptions, only this can take several working days in the US. So this is just a tiny example how this can provide a relief to a family.
I would also like to add about a project that we've been working now more than a year and a half. It's about digital triage. And I mean a real digital triage that anyone can do whenever he likes. So in the development process, we are hitting a lot of problems from, people are very worried, okay? It's like mental health is dangerous than anything else. I'm talking about the clinical staff. They're worried about what if someone will hurt himself. So it's obviously, we can all understand what are the worries, but I do think we're about to figure it out and to be up and running with the system. And I believe it's not only that every patient can get a triage that will tell him what is next step to do, where you need to go, and point it exactly to where it can schedule this appointment or find this therapist. But I think it also can standardize all the triage that we have in the organization, because they will all come to one place in the structured data. We can analyze it and work better, I hope.
I want to add on that in terms of smart triage and digital triage, to add the risk protocols, they will be very clear to clinician and to psychiatrist, or it's you can do. There are tests that can test the level of risk and how it can be automatically shift to the right people. So I think that risk protocols are extremely important.
I totally agree, and I want to ask you, because you mentioned it before, because in our digital triage, we're working with validated questionnaires. They're awful, right?
Depends. There are ways, by the way, we work with Columbia University that is actually shortening those.
Okay, so you talked
protocols.
about smart triage.
Yes.
So can you elaborate in 1 minute?
Yes. So it's we work with Professor Milton. I have to say his name because he's amazing. He also worked with a lot of Klalit and Leumit. He managed to shorten the common mental health, substance use, and risk assessment questionnaires to 3 to 10 questions, which is, we're talking about 60 questions versus 3 to 10 questions. And the system asks it in a way that is smart, right? If you answer no and no to this question, it wouldn't ask you other questions. And we have a very strict risk protocols that if someone answers, even in the passive suicide questions, yes, then it shoots an immediate alert to a psychiatrist and to the clinical staff to catch that and to see the level of clinical risk that they are at, and they should be assessed by a psychiatrist. So I think those, those stuff needs to be in place, and it's also plus giving insight to clinician afterwards. And it also helps with clinician burdens, because that's the scariest things that clinicians have. So if they have a questionnaire that is, there are questions for suicide ideation, it's also calming for the clinician. They can do their work more safely and not be stressed about this issue, in my eyes. But yeah, so.
So just to add on to that, and sticking right now with the theme of opportunities, and then we're going to shift again, but diagnostics is what you're talking about when you say questionnaires, and in pretty much every other healthcare-related field that I can think of, the diagnostics are very objective and clear. And in mental health, in psychology, they're questionnaires that were developed very differently than what I'm used to in my background in oncology. So do you see an opportunity with technology and the objectivity and the framework that we can build that is more precise because of technology, shifting away from or maybe incorporating technology on top of the questionnaires in some way?
I think it's a good question. Anyone wants to start? I'm like taking this like I'm at a rock show. I think there's a lot of opportunities to automate it, and I think we can. It can be the first line, and I think that can take us to the human aspect if needed, right? So it can be flagged if needed a human attention or something like that. But I think that should be the top of the funnel. We have a massive amount of people. It can screen. It can help the stepped care model. It can, tell you the people that really need that empathy one-on-one now, or they can be in, sent to a first line of treatment, which is psychoeducational, self-help, all that, or they need help now. So I think that is extremely important. That's why I'm very happy to hear that you're working on a smart triage that can actually, get people where they need and when they need it. I think that's the key here, and that's how we can use, technology as an infrastructure for all that.
And again, it might sound obvious, but for example, in your background as an oncologist and in many other forms of healthcare, the intake is based on some form of physical examination or hospitalization. So sometimes you need to do a scan or ultrasound and take blood, measure something, and the advantage in mental health that many of those things can be done just by talking and interviewing and surveying, and it doesn't need to be like a boring questionnaire. It can be a conversation. But nowadays, conversation can also be done with a technology. So a lot of scale can be done by that. So.
Yeah, you can, now there's technology where it looks into your eyes and looks at the levels of trauma or your body language, and the technology can read your movement and your voice. And I find it incredibly exciting and fascinating. Anything else to add before we shift again?
I just want to add to what you just said, that if you want to take, except for the conversation, some kind of measurements, so I believe it can be additive to the conversation. It can work as a standalone. And it also is a practical problem how you grab this data, because you need just as a smartwatch, or you need something more advanced. So it's complicated when you come to actually implement it.
Yeah, it's definitely complicated. Right now, I agree that it's additive. Maybe in the future, it could be replacement. We'll see. So speaking about the future, so as diagnostics become more objective and systems more autonomous, we inevitably reach a threshold question. So as we've mentioned, in other areas of medicine, greater precision improves outcomes. But trauma healing is deeply relational, complex, and personal. And there's a lot yet to still be discovered. So let's talk about AI, which is really the elephant in the room, as we've tried to evade for the last few minutes here. Is it possible that AI could become more diagnostically accurate than the current standard diagnostics? And could it augment or ... could it possibly replace therapy? So is that a future we should be building toward or guarding against? Who would like to start?
I will start.
All right, it's all yours.
Of course, we're all worried. We read some researches about the downside, about wrong advices that people got from ChatGPTs or other tools. But nobody talks about who got help from ChatGPTs. Okay, nobody counted. And I just saw a JAMA article which is dealing with the US about the use of generative AI of mental health advice in the US. And it said that 18% of the adolescents with depressive episodes, there are 18% of adolescents with depressive episodes. Only 40% of them got some kind of treatment. Okay, so what about the rest? And the second thing is, there is a guy, his name is Nolan Bushnell. He was the inventor of the Atari game, okay, back in the last 70s. And he has said, he's saying, I'm not afraid of artificial intelligence, I'm afraid of natural stupidity. And I believe that I'm afraid of the mix, okay? Because you really need to know how to deal with these kind of tools. And in the same article from the States, 92% of people aged 18 to 21 said that it was somewhat to very helpful for them. And they're talking about regular ChatGPT. And by the way, when you go to this age group, it's 42% that was very helpful. If you go to younger audience, it's splitting. But the obvious thing is that we cannot ignore it. Okay, it is already happening. We need to know and to see how we can make it more risk-free. Okay, something that you can trust.
I want to add to that and say, if you can't beat them, join them. And I see it, and I totally agree with what you just said. I see it. I'm also a teen psychologist in the U.S., and I understand that a lot of Generation Z, especially, are using ChatGPT as a pocket therapist. So they see me once a week, but they go to ChatGPT every day. It's, again, if you can't beat them, join them. We can't ignore it. We can, as a clinician, mitigate challenges that it can create. And I have examples. First of all, my clients are sending me their ChatGPT prompts. They think I can read it during the week, and it can be very worrying. So I agree with you that ChatGPT, especially for non-clinical population, can be very helpful. Or for relationship advice, like my son is like, what can I do with my girlfriend? I'm like, okay, go to ChatGPT. I'm a real psychologist. I'm kidding. But the problem is that for clinical population and for people who with severe mental illness, if I'm talking about bipolar, it can actually do damage because it tells you what you want to hear, right? So the next response is what you want to hear. And if you are a little manic, it can actually magnify your manic episode. And it happened to me with one client that it just really induced a manic episode. So I think as clinician, we have the duty to work with it. I sometimes feel like I'm a co-therapist with ChatGPT, to be very mindful of it, because it's going to come to us in massive challenges. But again, it can also do good. And I think, if you ask me what's the vision, we will mitigate the damages and we'll tell clients what's important, what's not important. They will send us the prompts, and we will be therapists by sorting what's, I'm kidding, I hope not. But we can't ignore it. It's coming at us. It's the new generation. They're using it every day. So we have to kind of join it and see how we are mitigating and working with it to create a safe digital environment in terms of that.
And so typically the blind spot in those discussions are the assumption that the clinicians are better. So the clinicians will never cause a manic person to become more manic, or the clinicians will never have ethical problems, or so this is usually the blind spot. And I spent 5 out of the 11 years of this health tech company that I told you about. 5 years I just spent on stages in radiology conferences to convince doctors, and specifically radiologists and oncologists, that AI will not replace them. Otherwise, they will not even consider working with us. They were just reading all those articles that AI is going to replace them. Fast forward 14 years now, 90% of the radiologists all over the world are already using AI tools as decision support tools. Millions and millions of patients are benefiting from this. No radiologist was replaced by AI, and there is still a huge shortage worldwide in any medical professions. In mental health, it's even more severe. So it's nowhere near. And in addition to that, we saw that every tool we developed back then, we had to submit to the FDA. And when we submitted it, we already knew that it's much more accurate than the doctor in this specific thing. But it still took 180 days for the FDA to get back to us and approve this tool for fractures and for stroke and brain bleed and breast cancer. And eventually we had 10 FDA approvals and 2 CPT codes, but it took so much time. And when you see how the FDA deals with each one of those identification, you see that they put a lot of rigor and effort to see that it's safe. So it's not enough to say that it's more accurate than the doctor. You need to show that it was trained on what's called qualified data sets, that are, and there is a separation to the validation set and to the training set. And you need to have enough resources and enough sources of samples. So if you, in mental health, it can't be just one healthcare system or one technology. So it needs to be a diverse data set, and there are so many things you need to prove, and doctors don't need to prove it. Like you can graduate from one university, you can see 100 cases during your training, and then you can run on a night. You can manage a night shift in a hospital or a clinic, and you deal with case number 101. You don't need to prove anything. You don't need to prove you're not tired. You don't need to prove any bias. So there is a lot of promise in technology, and specifically in AI, and just because it will be regulated in a good way. On the other hand, we saw in the last year crazy cases where irresponsible acts, like Elon Musk telling everyone can now upload their scans to Grok, and you saw husbands uploading their wives' mammograms, and the AI tell them there is a brain tumor in the mammogram, and people still start to react to that. So as you mentioned earlier, the natural stupidity is still there.
I like to tell people on that same topic. So I live in Phoenix, Arizona, and we have a huge fleet of unmanned taxis. Like you just take a car that it's autonomous driving everywhere. The whole city is full of them. Actually, I had an Israeli delegation of companies there last May, and every single one of them took those taxis all the time. And it's funny because in the news for the first year when they came out, the news was always covered with all of the issues that these vehicles would have. But side by side to that was covered in the news was covering all the accidents that humans caused. And so now it's like really quiet. Those vehicles are just fine because they're way more reliable than the human drivers. So completely different than this, but the same concept, to consider, not to ignore the risks, but to consider the fact. And my brother too. He works for Lockheed Martin, and he does works for the government and does all the engineering for all the autonomous on the drones and the vehicles that they use in he's in defense, and he said the same thing, like that you can't look for perfection. You have to look for what's better to keep moving forward. So it gets me. Needs to be better than human, but we also can't ignore the problems that are being, caused as a result. What else? Go ahead, Nir.
So I think that the last example that is now running in the States is the bot of Real Food. I don't know if you started chatting with him, but if you ask him where do you need to eat bananas from, he thinks that it's better to eat bananas reversed. I don't know why he says that, but it is a formal bot of the US government operated by Grok. So I think that reliable and responsible AI is not a small issue. It is an issue that we will face. The first comment that I want to make is that AI is already affecting the mental health of billions of people. And we always think about how therapists use AI, but most of the AI is not used by therapists. There are giant campaigns in social media. In some networks, most of the people that we talk with and we argue with are AI bots. And these bots affect our mental health. We see it in political campaigns. We see it in fake news. In some medias, you have more than 90% of fake video, and it is deep fake. So I think that my first prediction, it's a personal prediction, is that AI will definitely increase the demand for mental health. Now, we predicted earlier that there are some things that therapists can do and AI cannot do. For example, empathy. But now we have more and more AI tools that are better than their parallel physicians, not only in clinical outcomes, but also in empathy. Okay, people give them higher empathy grades than they give physicians. And when you ask this person, why did you give the robot a 100% empathy? It's a robot. It's like, well, I know that she's a robot, and I know that she's faking empathy, but she's faking empathy much better than my physician.
She gets me.
Yeah. She's reliable. So I think my personal belief, I'm not representing anyone, but my personal belief is that there is something very special in the human spirit. And that this is something that is irreplaceable, and it is not because we have legs and hands, it is because of our mind. But I need to be much more hesitative when I'm saying, oh, this specific task, AI would never be able to do that. Because we said it on many, many tasks that AI is very good performing at right now.
Any other comments before we go to our last question? All right, so let's think about moving forward. We want to think about what we do need to change and how we want to move forward. So the final question is, if we want to responsibly accelerate trauma healing technology over the next 5 years, what are one or two things that you think we need to change as soon as possible? Do you want to start, Nir?
Okay, I'll start. I think that the first thing that we need is a change of priorities. This is not a matter of technology. I think that if we will understand that this epidemic is strong and that if we will not defeat it, it will defeat us, then the rest will be just details. I think that we need to invest more budgets in the mental health system in Israel. I think that we need to allocate more of the AI national program that we have to mental health AI solutions. And I think that we need to work very, very closely. And in this sense, I think that ICAR is doing a wonderful job. And the fact that there is someone that is integrating all these great people that are dealing with mental health into one place is extremely important. I think that if we will ask the patients themselves, and if we will ask the clinicians, and if we will leverage technology, then the sky is the limit.
I believe that I want to find a solution for how we can regulate AI solutions in healthcare. And to be clear, I'm not saying the regulator is bad. I believe there is a real problem, real challenge here, how you can regulate AI solutions, specifically generative AI solutions. It's a huge challenge, but I think we must find a way to solve it, because this is basically the key for major change in mental health and other area as well. So I really think this is something that is, but this is like a scientific or technological issue. How can you validate things like that? I can tell you, I saw a robot that it's a bot, but you need to wear Apple's VR solutions, okay? It is called Saya. And I took a therapy, the demo, of course. It was amazing. It was definitely amazing. So we must find a way how to effectively and risk-free find a way to regulate it.
I think that's a really good point. I think if we want to get to a care step model, we need to understand where people are at. So to diagnose where people are at and give them in the low to moderate risk certain treatment that are more virtual and self-help, rather than one-on-one clinician, which will be saved for the more severe population, will be a very important step. We have to protect our clinicians as much as possible so they can reach the people that need it the most. We have to train clinicians in a more effective way, which I think technology can be extremely, extremely helpful. Clinician needs help. They need to be trained in trauma models. They need to be trained in the latest protocols. I do think AI and technology can be really helpful and supportive in that. They also need community and peer support, whether it's virtual or technological or anything that can help that. So I think doing that is also very important, coming from my clinician side.
A non-clinician perspective is that I can imagine how in the future we'll have automated triage and how the AI will help us to better identify things and enable the clinician to do their work better. I do think that, from my perspective, that there is a whole slew of processes that is not taken care of and even not discussed, which is the integration process. So after someone is getting treated by one of the healing models, much of what I see that works is that there is a follow-up and an ongoing follow-up of how this patient can integrate the insights into their day-to-day life and not go back to the trauma story of being a victim or nothing is working for me and so forth. So those type of, I would call it better stories maintenance and follow-ups, I think, are much needed. The AI can help with that as well. And again, we mentioned before our government's fake attempt to call this tkuma or to say it's not tevach, but there is a better way to do profound integration and help people to go to post-trauma growth, for example, and not just by changing the name of what's happened.
I want to add to that I also think that predictive prevention model is something that can really be helpful. Like knowing who are the people that will have those fallouts, or kind of creating prevention models and knowing which population is at risk, I think is possible and very needed.
Any other final? Okay. Well, I think, Nir, you hit the nail on the head with your comment that AI cannot replace the human spirit. And there's one thing for me personally that I believe that AI won't ever replace, and that's the energy between us all. As we sit here in closeness to each other, there's energy that is not really able to be measured, but we can all feel it and we know we have it, and it enhances our connection with each other. It heals us, and we don't even have to talk for it to happen. We don't have to interact even. We just have to be near each other. So that gives me hope that humans cannot be replaced. We can't have AI replace each other for each other. And I think, too, as we move forward, we need to think about all of the opportunities and not forget what they are and not look at just the risks, or else we can't progress. The opportunity here is too big. And I love that we were able to talk about diagnostics and how we can use data more efficiently and workflows and triage and be able to move forward responsibly. We do need the regulators to get on board. I meet with the FDA almost every month, and they're getting there, and we're all getting there together. The desire is for sure there. So just in final closing, I think what we'll do is no questions, but certainly available to talk. Anyone who wants to come up and talk to us between the sessions. Just a couple things to think about. We're not just building tools. We're shaping the future architecture of trauma healing. Technology will continue to scale. That's inevitable. And the real question is whether we will scale with wisdom, rigor, responsibility alongside it. And most importantly, not replace each other and maximize the love and the energy that we can all build together while we're building technology to improve the future.